Edward Brown, host of The Best of Investing, here to remind you to tune in this week on Saturday at 8 p.m. Our guest is going to be Cameron Bishop. You're not going to want to miss this show. That's The Best of Investing on Saturday at 8 p.m. Welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing. I'm your host, Edward Brown. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Use that number to answer the trivia questions for a 5-pack tanning certificate given away during this show. That certificate's not sponsored by the radio station, but by Tan Bella Tanning Salon with 2 locations in San Francisco and 1 in Marin. Today's trivia theme is miscellaneous trivia. Got to keep the audience in suspenders here. Do want to make a mention here for Pacific Private Money's new fund. It's called the Arrival Fund. Excuse me. It's a limited time only. Right now, they're still paying 10%. It's a fund that funds loans, first deeds of trust on houses, and then they go ahead and sell the loans out. So it's fairly conservative. Check them out, pacificprivatemoney.com for more details, and let them know that you heard about their fund on the Best of Investing radio show. You do have to qualify to invest, be an accredited investor, and they can explain all that to you. And also, they have their Freedom Fund, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is still paying 10% for about 6 months, but you have to check them for details on that. Again, check them out, pacificprivatemoney.com. We do have a special guest, Cameron Bishop of Raincatcher. I love that. I'm going to read a little episode or a little bit about Cameron here. He's going to discuss on this show because he's a seasoned executive and an entrepreneur with a proven track record of driving exceptional growth and transformation across diverse industries. He scaled a company from a small business to a $400 million enterprise with a global footprint. Cameron has dedicated himself to advising and mentoring business owners, guiding businesses through strategic transitions and maximizing their value. Hey, Cameron, welcome to The Best of Investing.
Wow, Edward, great setup. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
Well, and I appreciate having you. So I'm going to let you take it from here. What are you trying to educate our audience about?
Yeah, so it's a great opportunity. You have a fantastic audience where this conversation is really kind of right in the middle of the strike zone. So I have a particular passion at this point in my career for truly trying to help business owners to figure out the best way to exit their business. This all really started, I spent most of my career as an operating executive doing what are called leverage roll-ups for private equity firms. So I worked with some of the biggest, Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, JP Morgan Chase Bank's private equity group. And over that time, I acquired about 50 different companies, spent about $500 million doing that. And of course, we would integrate them into our existing platform. And to buy one company, it's very, very difficult. We would probably look at about 50 companies to acquire one. And we saw so many opportunities where the business just wasn't going to be sellable, or they were going to sacrifice a whole lot of value because they just didn't know how to structure and plan for an exit and position their companies properly.
Well, let me ask you something.
Sure.
Let me ask you, and we're going to go to a break here pretty soon, but what kind of businesses? Because there could be anything from a laundromat to a bookseller to drilling oil. I mean, do you specialize in a certain type of business?
Yeah, Edward, that's a great question. And actually, for better or worse, and oftentimes it's for worse, it really doesn't matter what the industry is. So our firm, Raincatcher, we're what's called a lower middle market investment bank. We focus on helping business owners sell their companies, and I'll go into some more detail about what that means here in just a minute.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that there were some companies that will, charge like a 10% commission or to sell, or maybe they'll take ownership of the business. And I'm familiar with like how accountants sell their businesses. Usually it's based on either one times gross, or excuse me, three. What was it? Gosh, it's been so long since I did that. It was either 100% of gross income or 20% of future years. It's all that fun stuff. Okay, we're going to cut to our first commercial break here, and our first trivia question. And I'll remind Cameron, if you know the answer, don't say anything quite yet. We'll see if you can when we come back. If you know the answer, which chemical in your body makes you blush? That's our trivia question. Call 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate, which, by the way, is worth about $100. Which chemical in your body makes you blush? All right, stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown along with Cameron Bishop. And our first trivia question, which chemical in your body makes you blush? Any idea, Cameron?
Man, I was a journalism major, Edward. I'm not good with those physiology questions.
Okay. Adrenaline.
Okay.
Interesting. Adrenaline, yeah. And before we get back to what we were talking with Cameron about, I do want to make a mention here. ABBA is playing at the, it's an ABBA tribute band, I should say, is playing at the Petaluma Mystic Theater on February 8th. And we want to make sure that everyone goes to see them, all right? And I'm just thinking that by the time this one airs, it's actually going to be on the 8th. So go check them out at the Mystic Theater in Petaluma to see the ABBA tribute band. All right. So Cameron, how do you work your business? Do you work with a team of people? How do people find out about you if they want to sell their business, et cetera?
Sure. Yeah, so we're what's called a sell-side firm. So we represent privately owned companies, family-owned businesses when they reach a time where they've decided they want to sell their company. And to your earlier question, Edward, we work in just about any industry you can think of. So we'll sell SaaS platform software companies, digital companies, e-commerce companies, but we do a tremendous amount of work in heavy industry, road construction, contracting of all kinds, distribution businesses. And the challenges that these private business owners face is pretty much across the board that's not industry specific. So our message is to try to get them to think about what they're going to need to do to properly prepare for an exit. And we see so many sad situations where we get a call from a business owner saying they're ready to sell their company, and there's just so many fundamentally wrong things with the business that they're either going to have to spend a year, 2 years, 3 years fixing things, or in some cases, sadly, they're just not sellable companies.
Or they'll have to stay on while the transition happens. So how do people who want to sell their business, how do they find you? And then how do you find buyers?
Yeah, two good questions. So our firm, Raincatcher, can be found on the internet, like about everything today, www.raincatcher.com. I can be found, Cameron Bishop, on LinkedIn or through our company website. And most of our clients actually come to us through those channels, or we get a lot of referrals from professionals like wealth managers, CPAs, and obviously other happy customers. But we have a very regimented process we go through with these folks when they call us to try to determine what their sellability is, give them opinions on valuation ranges. We don't charge for any of that. And yes, like you've heard, our firm, we're kind of what you call an eat what you kill firm, which is a great thing for our clients because it takes, surprisingly, Edward, it takes as much as 9, sometimes more in months to sell a company.
Oh,
we invest all of our time. Yeah, we invest all of our time into that, and we only get paid when a deal closes. So our clients,
selling a company is so much different than selling an apartment building, because you're talking about an active business rather than something that's passive.
Yeah. And most business owners, some decide to try to do it on their own, and certainly it can be done, but that's a little bit like being penny wise and pound foolish, because doing it right, even with proper representation, selling a company is a full-time job on top of a full-time job.
Yeah.
It's a very, very stressful process.
Well, plus there's also, potentially creative financing. Do you carry back paper? Do you attach it to the receivables? I'm sort of just coming off the top of my head thinking
Yeah,
about, all these various
yeah.
things that have to come in. And then, if you don't know, like you said, if you don't specifically have expertise in a specific area, but a lot of this stuff is kind of the same with regard to, businesses, they have employees, they have customers, et cetera. I mean, do you ever like hire specialists in a specific field?
Certainly we would if we need to, but the fundamentals are pretty much the same across industries. There are certainly certain specific characteristics of different kinds of business. So, for example, I recently sold a mining operation. Well, there's certainly things about the mining industry that you get up to speed on really quick, but the fundamentals of profits and losses and how much they spend on their construction equipment, those things are pretty much universal in the process. So are the ways the deals are structured. And I just encourage everybody, my core message is work with professionals. So when I was
Yeah,
on the operating side of the business running companies, my theory was know what you know how to do well and do it. Know what you don't know how to do well and hire experts to do it for you.
exactly.
That
I
includes,
totally agree. And then do you have like a sliding scale? For the larger the company, you take a smaller commission,
yep,
that sort of
we
thing.
sure do. Yeah,
At
that's
this
how the
point.
process works as investment bankers. And in our case, we're affiliated with a FINRA registered broker dealer, so we meet all of the
Oh, okay.
SEC and national compliance requirements to represent our clients properly.
Terrific. All right, we're going to cut to another commercial break here. Different question. This is not a physiology one. Who was Gerald Ford's running mate in the 1976 presidential election? All right. Who was Gerald Ford's running mate in the 1976 presidential election? Call 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer wins that tanning certificate. And again, don't forget to check out the ABBA tribute band tonight at Petaluma Mystic Theater. If you love ABBA music, you're going to love these guys. All right. When we come back, we're going to continue on with Cameron Bishop, who's going to talk to us about what it's like to buy and sell a company, mostly on the selling side, because that's actually your specialty. All right. Again, the trivia question: who was Gerald Ford's running mate in the 1976 election? Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing will be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. One more time, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Cameron Bishop of Rainmaker, which I love that name. It's very easy to remember, and it kind of totally makes sense. Second trivia question: who was Gerald Ford's running mate in the 1976 election? Cameron, what do you think? I know you weren't
Man,
born then, but
you're making me look pretty bad here today, Edward. These are complex trivia questions.
yeah,
I've
it's
fought
funny.
the first two now.
It's funny. I actually had missed this one. I thought it was Nelson Rockefeller, but he wasn't his running mate. I think what happened was when Nixon retired and Ford became president, he had to pick a vice president, and I think that was Nelson Rockefeller. But when it came time to the '76 election against Carter, he had Bob Dole. So it was
Okay,
Ford.
I should know that because I'm from the state of Kansas.
Yep. There you
I
go.
should have known
All
that
right.
one.
All right. So Cameron Bishop from Rainmaker, we're talking about what it's like to sell a company. So many, I'm going to read a little topic here. So many in corporate America either get tired of the corporate world and want to go out on their own and lose their job to corporate downsizing, et cetera. They don't want to move their family or the city of their job. So they attempt they attempt to buy a business. We often refer to that as buying an income. What are the pros and cons to buying a business, and what to expect and how to do it?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question, and we see more and more of this. In fact, I'm based here in Kansas City, and a number of years ago, when Sprint Cellular merged with T-Mobile, there were a lot of executives here because Kansas City was the corporate headquarters, and a lot of the senior management were, kind of downsized out of the business, but they had some wealth built up either through 401ks or stock options or just their savings and bonuses. And because they didn't want to leave the greater metropolitan area and they weren't going to replace their incomes because they're all fairly well compensated with Sprint, they made the decision to try to acquire a business. And uh, many of those professionals weren't in a position where they were having to manage every aspect of a business. They were very specialized. Let's say they were in human resources, for example. But that doesn't really prepare you for going out and taking out an SBA loan or
Yeah.
putting a strategic plan in place or all the disciplines that are required for someone who runs a company. They also don't realize how truly difficult it is to buy a business. And I would counsel them because a lot of them would come to me and I would say, hey, look, you better have the savings to be able to
Yeah.
fund your lifestyle for conservatively 2 years, because it could
Yeah.
easily take you that long to find a business, get the financing in place, and actually win the deal if it's a competitive bidding process. And that was in and of itself always an eye opener for them.
Also, I'm thinking about this that there's going to be some businesses that are going to be hard to purchase because they're more service oriented. Let's say, like, not a big law firm, but let's say, one man shop. Now, maybe that's too small for you to deal with, but, one man shop who's an attorney, there's really not too much to sell because usually it's the personal service of the attorney who people are hiring.
Wow, Edward, you hit on another really critical point that I try to make is I'll give you a very quick example. So I recently was approached by a general contractor who was worked in a very specialized industry related to the biotech field. And he
Oh,
had 4 employees, but the business was almost solely dependent on him because of his very unique skill set and knowledge base, and compounded by the fact that one customer represented about 80% of his total business.
that's
Now, he
tough.
personally made a lot of money. He made
Yeah.
a very good living. But I had to I mean, sometimes it's hard for us because I have to tell them the truth. We owe them that. And his
Yeah.
business, as well as he did personally, it wasn't a sellable business. The
Exactly.
litmus test there is if, unfortunately, the proverbial get hit by a bus,
Yeah.
will the business sustain itself and continue? And almost always in these cases, it won't. And they don't understand it because they made a lot of money. But
Well, the
that's not
interesting
the
thing is, even if the other part of this, though, is that if 80% is by one client, a buyer is going to say, "What happens if I lose that one client?"
Yeah, well, that's
That,
exactly what they do.
yeah,
Yeah.
that part's really tough. I've a couple of things I want to talk to you about on the break that are I have a friend who has a business who may be thinking about selling, and it may be right up your alley. All right, here is a third trivia question: what brand is named after the Greek goddess of victory? What brand? It's like a brand name that like let's say Nabisco. You'd go,
Mhm.
oh yeah, that's a brand name, Nabisco. Okay, so what brand is named after the Greek goddess of victory? Call 888-912-1190. First caller with correct answer wins that tanning certificate. Also want to make a mention here for Mountain Mike's Pizza in San Rafael. Pizza the way it ought to be. I tell you, they're going to be busy for the Super Bowl, so get your pizza in or early, and that's the Mountain Mike's Pizza in San Rafael. Stay with us. You're listening to the Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. Edward Brown here, along with Cameron Bishop of Rainmaker. Our third trivia question: what brand is named after the Greek goddess of victory? Cameron, what do you think?
I'm going to take a stab at this one. I'm probably wrong, but I'll go with Nike.
You are correct. That
Okay.
is correct. Nike, very good. And
I
figured
better go
since
buy
you're
a lottery ticket now.
That's right. Hey, listen, you know what? You want one for three, and that'll get you in the Hall of Fame in baseball, batting
There you go.
333. I had a feeling you'd get this because, you're kind of in the business of businesses and brand names and stuff. I mean, not necessarily brand names, but, buying and selling businesses.
Sure.
Do you also represent buyers too?
We do on occasion. Yes, we
Okay.
certainly give them a lot of guidance. And obviously, with our sell side clients, we work with dozens and dozens of interested buyers for businesses.
Very cool. So what else do you want to share with us? Because I know, many people approach, by friends and families who ask them for money to invest in a company. What to consider before investing? Well, you already mentioned about, having about 2 years worth of money. I had a feeling you were going to say the number 2 years. That seems
Yeah.
kind of a lot, but it totally makes sense. Um, what it's so funny. I can think about this too, where people say, "Oh yeah, I don't want to work so hard, so I'll be my own, boss," type of thing. And then I can work whenever I want. And those people don't realize you end up working twice as hard as ever,
This is
and
hard.
long as. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
same thing with, "Oh, I want
Most
to own
folks,
a restaurant because I love to cook." Yeah, no.
yeah, most folks don't know that well, they don't want to report to anybody anymore, and they go out and they start running their own business, and then they're reporting to an even tougher base, and that's their customers. And owning a company, especially if you've got employees, it's a 24/7, 365 job, and most
Well, I
most
know
people
someone who's
don't really understand that aspect. Yeah.
so I know someone who is a one-man general contractor. He does, kind of handyman work because, obviously can't build a house by himself. So he'll do a lot of repairs
Sure.
and stuff like that. And the issue is when he's working, he's not going and getting his next job. But when he's out getting his next job and bidding, he's not making money on it yet. So there's that balance. So I can kind of see,
Yeah,
for these
that
businesses.
is a difficult balance for a small business like that.
And
I
have
think
you have you
everyone, one
dealt?
of the key,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, have you dealt with restaurants at all?
No, we usually deal with businesses that are a little larger than most restaurants. We've
Okay.
definitely dealt with, we sold a chain of IHOP restaurants, but that was
Oh,
like 6 locations, but individual shops. That's not really in our strike zone. We're generally working with business owners that are generating $1 million plus in EBITDA profits.
okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, we have a few more minutes. What else do you want to share with us?
Yeah, so I think one of the key messages I really try to stress for business owners, because again, more and more need to sell because their children don't want to move into the business anymore.
Yeah.
And that means as baby boomers begin to age out, it becomes an increasingly competitive environment for people trying to sell a company. And the
Hmm.
top things we see that make a company unsellable or sell for far less are one, they have terrible accounting. They don't have accrual-based accounting. And I talked to a
Mhm.
gentleman yesterday morning. He didn't even know what his profits were. So you need to understand your numbers. You need to spend the money to work with professional, at least a really high quality bookkeeper, if not a controller, an outsourced CFO.
I don't know how he
Uh,
files his tax return if he doesn't know what his profit is.
yeah, well, that's right. Many times you'd be surprised they do what's called checkbook accounting, where if they have money in the checking account, they pay their bills. But
Ugh.
number two is the business can't be solely reliant on that owner.
Yeah.
Uh, it's called
Totally
owner
makes sense.
dependency. That's a big turnoff for buyers. And then we
Again,
mentioned this.
yeah, good.
Sure. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, again, just to remind the audience, if they have a business they are thinking about selling, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, they could reach us at www.raincatcher.com. We're headquartered in Denver, but we're a very virtual company with 16 team members across at least a dozen states.
Okay. We like to always take a little break here for our silly joke of the week. You ready for our silly joke of the week?
And I hope
All
it's a
right.
good dad joke, Edward.
And this was pretty good. I like this one. Okay, so and then our thoughts for the day are always kind of fun too. So a woman is walking home with her three daughters. The eldest daughter turns to her and asks, "Mom, how did I get my name?" "Well, sweetie, when we were bringing you home from the hospital, a rose petal landed on your head, so we named you Rose." And the second daughter, now curious, asked the same question. And, "Well, darling, when we were bringing you home from the hospital, a lily petal fell on your or landed on your head, so that's why we called you Lily." And the third girl says, and the mother says, "Shh, quiet now, cinder block." That's our silly joke
All
of the
right.
week. I'm
That's
sorry,
pretty
that was
close to
pretty
a dad joke, Edward. I'll
that's a
give you
pretty good
credit
one.
for
Yeah, I told her I sent that one just in writing to my wife, and she goes, "That's not funny." Like,
that.
come on, cinder block. That's funny. All right. Also, let's make one last mention here for Pacific Private Money's Arrival Fund, which, as we speak, is still open. They are going to be closing it fairly soon because they're getting to their limit. I don't know when that's going to be, but you may want to check them out, pacificprivatemoney.com, and ask about their Arrival Fund as well as their Pacific Freedom Fund. Tell them that you heard it on The Best of Investing, and I'm sure they will treat you very, very well. And Cameron, we'll be back. We got about 4 minutes to go with our fun thoughts of the day, and we'll have some closing comments from you as well. Don't have a trivia question, but audience, stay with us. You're listening to The Best of Investing. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Cameron Bishop. All right, Cameron, give our audience a little advice and a fun story, if you would.
Sure. Well, I don't know if it'll be a fun story, but it'll be a good message story. So again, we try to help educate business owners on the things they need to do. Part of that is they need to focus on themselves personally and what does life look like after they sell their company, because most business owners, they eat, sleep, and breathe their business. Then once they sell it, they need to figure out a new purpose. So we see a lot of business owners really struggle with that. But also to the factors I talked about earlier that impact a business. One really quick story. We represented a client that had a very successful small marketing and premiums incentives agency. Like we talked about, it was tremendous customer dependency there. One client represented 50% of his business. So we brought him 6 offers for the company, but no up front because of the risk associated with that one really large customer. And that gentleman turned down all 6 offers against our advice. And they were going to pay him a really good salary as well. And then 6 months after that, we stayed in touch with him. His largest customer, that 50% customer, completed, and suddenly his business became completely unsellable. So it was a sad situation. He was a very, very talented gentleman.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's like, almost like with real estate, where they say your first offer is usually your best one. And in this case, this guy had 6 offers. I mean, what was he thinking? Was he going to get a higher offer, or was he just like, I just don't know what I'm going to do once I sell?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of business owners have unrealistic expectations of what the true value of their business is. And at the end of the day, the market determines the value. We don't determine that value. We try to get the highest price, but the
Willing buyer,
market's
willing
going to
seller.
determine it. And he didn't like the offers, so it was his right to turn them down. But it was a sad outcome.
Well, yeah, especially when you lose your biggest customer, and then suddenly now even any of those offers was probably a lot more than what it was worth. So it's like those potential buyers, if they knew the rest of that story, they're probably going, "Whew, we dodged a bullet on that one," right?
Yes, sir. That's true.
That's crazy. And I think we got another quick minute. Do you have a success story there for us?
Yeah, for business owners who have a really buttoned up operation, I sold a road resurfacing company in Phoenix several years ago. Because their business was so well run, we gave them valuation estimates that were right at market norms. But the quality of their business was so strong, they ended up selling for way above our estimated price on the business to a very qualified buyer. So it could work the other way if you've got a really polished, buttoned up, well run operation with success planning in place and excellent accounting.
Yeah, I got to figure that the buyers are going to be looking and seeing how organized you are in your books, and and then they have to do their due diligence to make sure you're not cooking the books. Not you personally, but that the seller isn't, because I know like I've heard of companies that had like self storage, and when they do an inspection, there's 90% of them are full with locks, but there's nothing in them, and they'll put together some fake accounts receivable, and unless you can open the lock, which, oh no, you can't open the lock, that belongs to Joe Blow, so you really definitely have to do your due diligence. Well, Cameron Bishop, thank you so much for joining us from Raincatcher. For people who want to potentially buy or sell a business, because you can do both sides, check out Raincatcher .com. And we're going to go to our thoughts for the day here. So living on Earth is expensive, but it does include a free trip around the sun. That's pretty good. And most people are shocked when they find out how bad an electrician I am. All right. Tune in next week to the Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away more free prizes, answering trivia questions, and more dad jokes, of course. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.